Baking Blind with Penny Melville-Brown. Apple tarts. Hello. I'm going to start off with a really simple recipe that only takes 4 ingredients. That's apples, flour, sugar, butter. And just to make a simple apple flan. So I'm just going to kick off now with my talking scales.
Hello. Scale is ready.
Okay, so that's just going to be 50 grams.
58 grams.
Or 58 grams, whichever is the closer. Then I've got in the fridge a bag of flour. Let's see, that's probably about 500 grams of flour, and it's been chilled overnight, so that means that it's much easier to make a cool pastry with. And I'm also getting out a block of butter. So I'm just going to chop the butter up.
240 grams.
Chop the butter up and put it into the bowl and then rub it in. Oh, a knife block there. So I'm just cubing it roughly just to make it easier to do the rubbing in. And this is a basic sweet short crust pastry. Now you may think I'm making vast amounts of pastry here, but because it freezes well, or it'll keep in the fridge for a few days, I think if you're going to make it, you might as well make a decent quantity, and then you can use it for other things later on. So that's cold butter into cold flour. So I'm just squeezing it through, and they say, oh, rub it through with your fingertips. Actually, it's not your fingertips, it's your fingerprints that are doing it. So I'm just going to rub this in, and that'll take me about 5 minutes. See, at this stage, you're just feeling it as if you've got some cubes and some flakes of butter. And you're just rubbing them all through your fingers to try and make the flakes. And then you'll break it down till the flakes get smaller and smaller. Right, I think that's just about done. It feels like, fine breadcrumbs. So not as fine as the powder, as the flour, not as fine as the sugar. A little bit heavier than that, slightly stickier. But just dribble through your fingertips. And I'm just lifting it up a bit because it doesn't hurt to get a bit of air into it all as well. Okay, time for some water. Lots of people would measure it. I'm just putting it under the tap and then using a palette knife to mix it in. When I start feeling that it's starting to mix together, as I am now, I'm using my hand just to pull it all together, and this time I'm using it much more like a sort of claw with little pastry fingertips just to pull it all together. And if I want a bit more water, it needs a bit more. I can feel it starting to come together. It's coming off the side of the bowl. That's one of the fallbacks of this, is you end up with rather pastry taps, but I can sort that out in a minute. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I've got a plastic bag over here. There's a nice ball. Okay, so that's a bag into the fridge. I'll put a clip on it in a second. That'll be in there for about 20 minutes or more. I'm just going to wash my hands. While the pastry's chilling, I'm just going to peel the apples, and I'm allowing myself about 1 apple for each little individual apple flan. And these are apples that we've grown here. We had a great big crop this year, and they're from the trees in the back garden. We reckon that they're at least 120 years old. And these are probably Bramleys. I've got two types of cookers back there, and these are probably the Bramleys. And this is the tricky bit about apples and not being able to see them. I'm hoping that if there are any bruises or any other unwanted bits, that I'll be able to feel them and sometimes smell them. But if there's actual wildlife inside, I'm afraid I won't be able to spot it, but it just adds protein to the finished product. So here's one of the balls of pastry I made earlier, and I'm just gently kneading it, just turning it over to form it into a smooth but not glistening. It's just soft enough to pick up any crumbs that might have fallen off. I'm going to take a portion of that and do it for my first flan. Now I'm making individual flans today, and somewhere here I have little foil tin cases. I've got a flour shaker here. One of the things when you can't see is managing flour can be really tricky, and of course it just sort of flies all over the place. You can't feel it, you can't smell it, you can't see it. So having a bit of control over flour is quite useful, and that's why I'm using this rolling out mat as well, because if I can find my rolling pin, voila. And by doing them individually, it also means I'm not trying to manage a great big piece of pastry, which again, can you see, it's not very evenly shaped, is it? I'm folding it in quarters so that I can then pop it into the flan dish like that, opening it up as I put it in the flan dish, and hopefully the pastry will meet all the sides. So let a little sniggle out. So I'm just coring the apples, and then I'm going to slice them pretty fine. Right, that's that first one done. So I'm going to take out one of the flan cases and just start laying it up. Each couple of layers of apple, I'm going to just fill that in the middle. I'm going to put in a teaspoonful of sugar. And I'm going to layer this quite deeply. And then that will do as our first apple flan. Ooh, except the bits that fell off. There you are at last. 4 little flans ready to go. I'm just going to give each one a final sprinkle of sugar, and the oven is at full heat with a metal tray in there. So now I'm going to put on my trusty oven gloves. In they go. Carefully, you note this time, not whacked. And I'm going to turn the oven down now to guess mark 7. Leave them there for 10-15 minutes so I can start smelling them, and then I'll turn them down to gas mark 5 for another 5 minutes. I can smell those cooked apples. Here they are coming out of the oven. 4 little French apple tarts with not a lot of sugar, nice and brown on the top where it's just starting to caramelise, and so I would serve those with cream or custard or ice cream, and they freeze pretty well as well. So, bon appetito! You can download this and all the other recipes from my blog at www.disabilitydynamics.co.uk.